Have you ever imagined what it will take for an airliner carrying more than 150 passengers to start falling like a rock to the ground over a crowded city like Paris? Stay tuned as we uncover the shocking events of TAROM Flight 381. September the 24th, 1994. It's a calm morning over the skies of France as TAROM Flight 381 is nearing the end of its 2.5-hour flight from Bucharest in Romania to Paris in France. TAROM Airlines is the flag carrier of Romania, flying to a wide variety of destinations across Europe and the world, using the latest available aircrafts in service. Operating this flight is a 2-year-old brand new Airbus A310-300. It's the younger brother and shortened version of the Airbus A300. It carries less than the A300, but it is able to fly further than it. On board the A310 are a total of 175 passengers, with a crew of 11 members. The majority are tourists visiting Paris and its wonderful attractions. In the cockpit are 3 pilots. A 46-year-old captain at the left seat with 12,800 flying hours. 10,040 hours of them are on the A310. A 41-year-old co-pilot at the right seat with 9,828 flying hours. 208 hours of them are on the A310. And a 41-year-old observer at the jump seat with 4,848 flying hours. 3 hours of them on the A310. He is new to the jet and this is just a familiarization flight for him. It's 10:36 local time. The aircraft is passing through 14,000 feet on its way to 6,000 feet to begin the approach to land in Paris. They will be landing at Paris Orly Airport, a mega airport with 3 long runways. The weather around the airport is fairly calm with good visibility and a 10-knot wind at 200 degrees. This wind direction ultimately makes runway 25 as the active runway to land. At 10:38 local time, they are cleared to descend to 3,000 feet to intercept the ILS. The pilots will be landing using the ILS system or the Instrument Landing System to land on runway 25. It basically guides the aircraft using radio signals, laterally called localizer and vertically called glide path, to the beginning of the runway called threshold. It's 10:41 local time, the passengers are all strapped in and the aircraft is about to capture the ILS at 3,000 feet, flying at 250 knots.
Localizer and glide slop alive.
Checked. You are strapped in?
Yes, I am.
It's not capturing it.
We don't have time for this. Let me fly it manually. I can fly it like this until we land.
All right, Captain.
It seems the autopilot for some reason did not capture the ILS, so the captain has decided to fly the aircraft manually, leaving the auto throttle on. Pilots are supposed to be flying manually, so flying the approach manually is no problem at all.
Set missed approach altitude, flaps 1515.
4,000 feet set. 15/15 set.
Landing gear down.
Landing gear down.
At 10:43 local time, the aircraft is fully established on the approach and is about to land. It is approximately 6 to 5 nautical miles from the runway.
147 knots. Flaps 2020.
20/20th set.
Tell him that we are on final.
Tower TAROM 381 on final 25.
TAROM 381 cleared to land. Wind 200 degrees, 10 knots.
Cleared to land, thank you. So at 200 with 10 miles. Coming from the left.
Hey, what is it doing?
Take it manually.
Give me a speed here.
134.
Hey, it's doing a go around. Hey, hey, hey.
What's wrong with it?
Mayday.
TAROM 381 turn left if you want heading 180.
What's wrong with it? Lift it up. What's wrong with it?
The aircraft climbs dangerously up until it comes to a complete stop in mid-air and then starts to fall.
Alas, we're falling. We're falling. We're falling.
They are now in a complete stall, falling like a rock to the ground.
Damn it.
TAROM 381, do you hear me? Do you hear me?
Shit! TAROM 381, we've got problems.
TAROM 381, if you hear me, as you like for landing 26.
We've got problems with autopilot.
Miraculously at 10:45 local time, after almost crashing to the ground, the pilots somehow managed to recover the aircraft.
Pitch trim is off.
Do you agree to turn left on the ILS now?
Yes, we can do it.
Let it stay like that. Leave it, leave it.
TAROM 381, do you have full control of your aircraft now?
Approximately 50%. About 50% is under control.
For the moment.
Copy TAROM 381.
They've managed to save the aircraft, but they still don't know what caused it or if it may happen again. In spite of the uncertainty of the aircraft's condition and with the possibility of the same problem happening again, the pilots pulled themselves together and at 10:52 local time, they land their aircraft safely at Paris-Orly Airport. At 10:55 local time, the aircraft safely docks at one of the airport's parking positions, ending the short crisis that was over Paris. In spite of the crazy roller coaster ride, no one was hurt. Well, physically at most. So how did a routine landing almost turn into a disaster? Let's find out. The investigation of this incident was done by the French BEA and discovered that only one factor led to this incident: pilot error. So how did pilot error cause this incident? Let's go back in time and see carefully what happened. At 10:41 local time, the aircraft was intercepting the ILS with the captain flying the aircraft manually because the autopilot had been disconnected due to it not capturing the ILS. This was because the pilots were trying to intercept the ILS signal at a high speed of more than 240 knots with a wide interception angle. These parameters were not in the normal range for the autopilot to capture the ILS signal. The aircraft was in this state because the pilots had begun their descent from their cruising altitude of 35,000 feet late, making the management of speed hard, and they rushed the approach. Nonetheless, the aircraft was manually aligned to the localizer with the captain hand flying it. The speed began to slow down, allowing the landing gear to be lowered together with the flaps and other items. At 10:43 local time, the speed had gone down and it was approaching 195 knots. With this knowledge, the captain ordered the co-pilot to put a flap setting of 20 degrees. The flaps are mechanical devices stored in the wings and produce lift when they are extended, allowing the aircraft to fly at low speeds. On the A310, flaps 20 has a speed limit known as VFE of exactly 195 knots. This means that if the speed increased more than 195 knots, then the flaps will be damaged. To prevent the flaps from getting damaged, Airbus, the company that made the A310, added automated protection systems to keep the aircraft safe from dangerous speeds and flight envelopes. For the purposes of this incident, we need to learn how a specific automated protection system works. You have to understand that almost all the automated protection systems are integrated into the autopilot system of the aircraft. So, to understand the automated protection system, we need to learn how the autopilot works. It's a bit complicated, but please bear with me as I simplify it for you. As the name suggests, the autopilot controls the aircraft automatically, allowing the pilots to rest, especially in the cruise phase of the flight. It controls 4 things: the ailerons, the elevators, the elevator trim, and the engines. It is controlled in the cockpit on the autopilot control panel. All commercial airlines have it, and the majority of private aircrafts have them as well. This panel might look different on some aircraft and might have less or more features, but almost all of them have the same. This is how the autopilot control panel on the A310 looks like. In general, the autopilot control panel is divided into 2 parts: the auto throttle part and the auto flight part. Together, they allow the pilot to fly the aircraft in different ways. With the control of the ailerons, the autopilot gives the pilot 2 modes: heading mode and navigation mode. The heading mode makes the aircraft follow a selected heading. The navigation mode is subdivided into many parts, but it basically makes the aircraft 1. Follow a program route from the GPS or the flight management computer. 2. Follow the localizer signal of an ILS, or follow a selected heading to or from a VOR radio station. With the control of the elevator and elevator trim, the autopilot gives the pilot 5 modes: altitude hold mode, pitch mode, vertical speed mode, speed hold mode, and glide slope mode. The first 2 speak for themselves: altitude hold mode for maintaining a selected altitude, and pitch mode for maintaining a selected nose angle. The vertical speed mode allows the pilot to fly at a selected rate of climb. It can be 500 feet per minute or 2000 feet per minute or more. The speed hold mode uses the pitch of the aircraft to maintain the selected airspeed. The glide slope mode makes the aircraft follow the glide angle of the ILS. With the control of the engines, the autopilot gives the pilot 1 mode: auto throttle mode. This mode is subdivided into speed mode, N1 or EPR mode, and retard mode. Speed mode maintains a selected airspeed. N1 or EPR mode maintains the predetermined high power that the engine can produce continuously. Retard mode maintains the lowest achievable power setting of the engines. All these modes are just the basics of what an autopilot can do, but a lot of manufacturers combine some modes to make them work together. They are very complex, but once together we get modes like LNAV, VNAV, APP, and so on. I won't touch on them because they will end up making this video 1 hour to 2 hours long. But for the purposes of this incident, there is one complex mode that we need to know: the flight level change mode. Together with 5 other modes: speed mode, N1 mode, retard mode, speed hold mode, and altitude hold mode. The flight level change mode allows the aircraft to climb or to descend at the fastest rate possible while maintaining a safe selected airspeed. In order to climb in this mode, the pilot flying will set a higher altitude in the altitude hold box than the one the aircraft is currently flying at, then push the flight level change mode. When pushed, the N1 or EPR mode will set the highest thrust available. The speed hold mode will set a pitch angle that will make the speed remain at the selected value and will neither increase or decrease even though N1 mode has set the highest thrust available. This will make the aircraft have the highest climb rate possible while maintaining the selected speed. As the aircraft reaches the selected altitude, N1 mode will change to speed mode, and the speed hold mode will decrease the pitch and then change into altitude hold mode. To descend in this mode, the pilot flying will set a lower altitude in the altitude hold box than the one the aircraft is currently flying at, and then push the flight level change button. When pushed, the retard mode will set idle thrust. The speed hold mode will set a pitch angle that will make the speed remain at the selected value and will neither increase or decrease. This will make the aircraft have the highest descent rate possible while maintaining the selected airspeed. As the aircraft reaches the selected altitude, retard mode will change to speed mode. Speed hold mode will decrease the pitch angle, then change into altitude hold mode. With this, you now know the basics of the autopilot. Let's get back on topic. The automated protection systems are very different from aircraft to aircraft. The automated protection system of Boeing will never be the same as those for Airbus. But in general, they all revolve around stuff like low speed protection, max allowable speed protection, max engine power setting, max landing gear retraction speed, max bank angle, angle of attack, and so on. But know that for any automated protection system to be engaged, some criteria must be met. This is to ensure that they don't randomly activate at the wrong time or wrong phase of flight. For this incident, the automated protection system that concerns us the most is the flaps automated protection. The A310's flaps automated protection works by utilizing our good friend, the flight level change mode. The criteria for this automated protection to engage are as follows. 1. The autopilot has to be in vertical speed mode. 2. The actual speed has to be equal or greater to the VFE, which is the max speed of a selected flap angle. So this means that when the VFE of a selected flap configuration is reached and the vertical speed mode is active, flight level change mode will be activated. And if you remember, depending on the selected altitude, the aircraft will either climb or descend. Now, I know that's a lot of knowledge to take in, but this will help us to understand better the events of TAROM 381. At 10:41 local time, the aircraft was intercepting the ILS with the captain flying the aircraft manually because the autopilot had been disconnected due to it not capturing the ILS, which was caused by the pilot's mismanagement of the descent and the approach. Now, if the pilots had properly flown the approach, the autopilot would have captured the ILS by changing modes from the heading mode to localizer mode and from altitude hold mode to glide slope mode. But due to the rushed approach, this did not happen. Instead, when the autopilot failed to capture the ILS, the captain disconnected the autopilot, leaving only the auto throttle on. Although the autopilot was disconnected, this did not mean that it stopped working, as the captain was aligning the aircraft to the ILS manually. The heading mode changed to localizer mode, but the altitude hold mode changed to vertical speed mode. Here, one of the flaps automated protection system criteria is met. The captain continued the approach and at 10:42 local time, around 2,700 feet, he told the co-pilot to put the landing gear down, flaps 15, and to set a go-around altitude of 4,000 feet in the altitude hold box, which is higher than the actual altitude. At 10:43 local time, as the speed was reaching 195 knots, the captain ordered the co-pilot to put a flap setting of 20. But flaps 20 has a VFE or the speed limit of exactly 195 knots. Now, unfortunately, due to some unknown reason, most likely a gust of wind, the speed increased by 2 to 3 knots, bringing the airspeed to around 197 knots. Here, all the criteria for the flaps automated protection had been met. The autopilot's flight level change mode activated, and since a higher altitude than the actual was set in the altitude hold box, a climb was commended. Since the autopilot was disconnected, nothing happened to the flight controls, but the auto throttle was still engaged. Remember that when climbing in flight level change mode, the auto throttle changes from speed mode to N1 mode and gives the maximum power the engines can provide. And so, as instructed, the auto throttle changed modes and started increasing the engine power. The pilots were surprised by the action of the auto throttle, thinking that it's doing a go-around. This indicated that the pilots were unfamiliar with the A310's flaps automated protection. In response, the captain quickly brought the throttles back down, and then here is where he made an unimaginable fatal error. Well, in this case, it was not fatal. You see, the captain had a lot of experience flying an aircraft called the BAC-111. Just like the other crew members, he was very new to the A310. When the throttles were increasing, the captain thought that maybe the autopilot was still somehow engaged, which was not the case. And so in response, the captain wanted to disconnect the autopilot. But due to his high amount of experience on the BAC 111, he made a very fatal, well, not fatal, but very bad error. On the BAC 111, when someone wants to disconnect the autopilot, he or she would press a button on the left side of the yoke. But on the A310, it is not just the autopilot disconnect button that is on the left side of the yoke. There is also the pitch trim control, where normally the autopilot disconnect button on the BAC 111 would be. The pitch trim control, as the name suggests, controls the pitch of the aircraft, but it's very different from the elevators. The elevators, which are connected to the aircraft's yoke or joystick, applies an up or down force at the back of the aircraft, giving the pilots control of the aircraft's pitch. But there come a time when, due to the center of gravity being located at a different location than usual, the force that the elevators provide becomes too little to move the pitch of the aircraft. To fix this, we get the pitch trim mechanism. It works by not moving the elevators, but by either moving tabs on the elevators on small to medium aircraft, or by moving the whole stabilizer on medium to large aircraft. By moving the whole stabilizer, the pilot is given the control to not only reduce the force needed to apply on the yoke, but also the ability to increase or decrease the up or down force on the elevators if more or less is needed. The pitch trim mechanism is a very powerful tool to pilots if properly used. So, with the captain confusing the autopilot disconnect button with the pitch control button, the dangerous events of Flight 381 began. When the engine started spooling up due to the flaps protection automation, the captain thought that the autopilot was still engaged, although it was already off. In an effort to stabilize the approach, he brought the throttles back, but due to having a lot of experience on the BAC 111, he wanted to disconnect the autopilot. And so he pushed a button on the left side of the yoke without looking. What he did not know was that he was pushing on the trim control and was pushing it down, meaning that the trim system was now being given the command to increase the nose up force. This brought confusion into the cockpit, and well, you saw what happened. The nose of the aircraft started to pitch up. Even though the captain applied full elevator down on the yoke, the up force was just too great. With the nose pointing up, the aircraft climbed, decreasing its speed as it went. Some locals and tourists on the ground saw what was happening and were shocked at the events that were developing in their eyes. In the cockpit, the pilots were confused by the actions of the aircraft, which unfortunately were caused by the captain himself. The aircraft climbed all the way until 4,100 feet from the ground. With the speed practically at zero, the aircraft started falling like a rock to the ground. Thankfully, during the fall, the captain was able to miraculously save the aircraft just 800 feet from the ground, ending this roller coaster ride for the passengers. Due to the lack of knowledge concerning the automations of the aircraft and the captain's horrible mistake, this incident ended up being classified as an induced stall caused by pilot error. Unfortunately, this was not the first time that an incident of this nature had happened. It was actually the 7th time that pilots were fighting with the automation on the Airbus A310. Automation is good for pilots since they are primarily there to help the pilots when he or she is flying the aircraft in a way that should not normally be flown in. But this can only work if the pilot himself or herself knows what the automation is doing. It's the same thing for mechanisms that reduce the pilot's workload, just like the pitch trim system. It's a handy system, but if used improperly, well, we've all seen what will happen if that takes place. Fortunately, on this video, no one will be getting the rest in peace slogan, since no one died, thankfully. Thank you so much for watching this video, and can you just try to imagine what the crash site scene could have looked like if this plane actually crashed into the ground? But anyways, thankfully, that did not happen. Don't forget to like the video, to comment, and to give me your opinion of this incident. What do you think should have been done right, and what are your recommendations? And just click that subscribe button, the like button, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye.